the lessons to be learned. Speed, rage. That's his response. A father who's lost his son and asked for that not to happen. Exploiting this passion to create grievance and division. Be wrong in any circumstances, but to do it with the family expressly saying, please don't. It's unforgivable. Those that nothing good can come of it. And frankly, I myself, in a much smaller way, was on the receiving end after Lloyd throughout the madness. I was relentlessly accused of racism by basically influencing my job. Other restaurant critics, chefs who'd like giving bad reviews to, and people in The Guardian saying coroners are racist, unable to provide evidence behind them. And it was still personally and professionally. And now it's over. It's going back the other way, but I'm just going to celebrate. That's reading it today. Because he was white, they called the police on him. And then Novak was killed because he was white. Vikram Digwa and his brothers followed him because he was white. They stabbed him because he was white. They called the police on him after stabbing him because he was white. They said he was being racist because he was white. And the police believed him because he was white. The police arrested him because he was white. And the police didn't believe him after he'd been stabbed because he was white. The police let him drown in his own blood because he was white. When will you realise they hate us? They hate who we are, they hate where we come from, who we descend from, our countries, our cultures, our civilization. They want to destroy our civilization and those whom it belongs to. And then Novak was killed because he was white. Makes sense of urgency. I would have told you. I never really nice. But look, oppression and genocide that happens in Israel.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Eureka Conservative Podcast on a wet and miserable and windy Melbourne day. Though I was just watching the football in Adelaide versus Geelong, and God, pity those boys. It looks worse than it is in Melbourne. So if you're in the southeast corner of Australia, we are getting bucketed on. I've got a leak in my roof, 2 bucketfuls, just nuts. What do they call it? The flame for my gas heater's blown out, so I've got no hot water, and I'm not particularly going out in the cold to get it back on. What do they call it? Something like, I don't know. Anyway, I got to get that fixed. Anyway, welcome to a wet, windy, cold Thursday Melbourne night from me and my boy JJ here. He doesn't like these nights much. If you ever own a dog, you know, they hate the thunder and lightning, but he also hates the wind and heavy rain. So he'll probably be right next to me, unlike usual when he's up on the couch. So just got a more of a rant sort of episode today, no policy announcements. So I do have one announcement that I'll be building on in coming weeks. But wanted to continue my theme from this week, and I think it's an important theme. And one I've been roped into a little bit myself over the last couple of weeks. In Australia, we've had this ethno versus civic nationalist debate. What constitutes Australian, what's an Australian, all this sort of stuff. And then over in England, it's sort of I don't want to say an appropriate time because it was such a tragedy with this one with the young fella, Henry Nowak in England, who got murdered by a Sikh guy, a nutter. There is so many contradictions in the death of that young man. But it also makes you start to, God, how do I word this? Makes you start to think. I'll just come out and say it. It makes you start to think as a white person, okay? Now, anybody who's followed me for any length of time knows I'm a supporter of immigration as long as it's balanced, as long as it's that people who come here can assimilate and embed themselves within our culture. Bizarrely, some Australians still don't understand what our culture is. Go read a few books from this First and Second World War, especially ones on Gallipoli, ones on New Guinea, where mateship and what it means to be Australian is all about. The Rats of Tobruk, maybe read a book on that. Read about the nurses who were slaughtered by the Japs after the fall of Singapore. There's a bunch out there in the darkest hours where you find the real Australian values that come out. So if you're listening to this and you don't understand, go do some research. It's not hard. But mateship is very much up there, a fair go, giving everyone a bit of a leg up, coming to each other's aids in time of crisis, really strong values. and ones we should be quite proud of, not ashamed of. But they want us to be ashamed. All right? I don't care about the colour of your skin. I don't care about your background. I care about who you are. But that's me. I'm not in government. I'm not a bureaucrat. People in government and bureaucracies, and Australia is a mirror image of the UK. What happened with young Henry Nowak is happening over here. It already happened during Bondi when 15 people were murdered. Our governments, our bureaucrats, our institutions, our police, right the way through, our education system, it is aligned against white people. And I'm not even going to say white heterosexual people, just white people, which gives rise, and this is what the politicians don't understand, to the feelings of resentment and discrimination from within white communities. And that's why you're seeing the rise of things like white Australia, white nationalism, NSN, all sort of thing, because people will naturally gravitate towards people who are empathetic towards them. Now, I'm by no means pushing any of that, obviously. But I'm giving a reason as why people are pushing that. And the politicians just want to, hide it under the blanket. They want to pretend it's not there. Hey, if we put hate laws in, this won't fester. Hell yes, it will. If we put social media laws in, this won't fester. Yes, it will. If we put digital ID laws in, we'll control speech. No, you won't. It'll just go underground and it'll become worse. Don't believe that? Do some research on Nazi Germany through the 20s and 30s and the rise of Hitler, which is, by the way, coming back. Don't believe that. Get on X, look up Adolf Hitler, because this has happened to me. I can't even remember why. I think I must have mentioned Nazis. And all of a sudden, my algorithm, or Groyp as it could have been, I started getting all these clips about Hitler and the Nazis and how great they were. So they were coming through. So you can't contain it. You can't hide it. It's got to be out in the open where you can debate it. But what else has to happen is people need to get away from DEI and multiculturalism. When I say people, I'm talking about our politicians, our governments, our bureaucrats, our institutions. Because if they don't, a reckoning will happen in this country like I fear it's about to happen in England. If they don't sort it out, they're, I think, one tragedy away. I watched a clip this week, for example, on the three babies, the three girls who were in the dance studio at Southport that got slaughtered. I mean, slaughtered, not killed. And it went over the amount of times these 6-year-olds were stabbed. One was 60, I think one was 80, and another one was over 100. That bastard just repeatedly, forcefully, this was the autopsy, stabbed those young girls. If the real truth had have come out, they had massive riots as it was. If the real truth had have come out back then, as it could now, the place would go, it would blow up. England will blow up. If you have something else like that happen again, they're teetering on the brink. Politicians are now finally getting the courage to start speaking out. They've now got Reform and Restore starting to rise in the polls. So they've got their courage up politically. You've got ex-police officers who are coming out and saying, yeah, no, this DEI thing's a thing. More officers are more worried about, getting in trouble after George Floyd for being racist than they are for solving crimes. So they naturally favour the minority groups, the ethnic groups, over white people. It's reverse racism. Yet you've still got Keir Starmer saying there is no two-tier policing, there is no reverse racism, there's no anti-white racism, and no doubt Albo would be lockstep with that. If you don't think there's not reverse racism in this country, and I am not saying let's go back to, white nationalism or, dark racism or black racism or Jewish racism. There shouldn't be any racism. But the pendulum's now swung too far where white people need to start taking a stand for themselves. The problem with it, as soon as you do, you're called a bigot, a racist, a Nazi, all this sort of nonsense that goes on. They're doing it now with anybody who's protesting against the police behaviour And anyone who watched that cam footage would be disgusted by the police behaviour, where they believed a person who lied about racism and they disbelieved a person who was dying and said, I'm stabbed, I can't breathe, I need help, because they thought he was a racist. Why did they think he's a racist? Because he was white, because he was male. It's only a matter of time before that happens here. That will happen unless things change. So, on top of all our problems, this is coming from someone who last week was trying to plead with both sides of the nationalist debate to come together. Whether you're black, whether you're white, for the benefit of Australia, come together. I have real fears now that if this keeps going, it'll split us entirely, which is maybe what certain politicians want. They want to play the race card to divide the centre-right. And politically, Albo, I'm not going to say smart, but I can understand the strategy behind it because he's in a lot of trouble. The centre right now collectively, so between the LNP, One Nation, independents, all that sort of thing, they're outpolling the left. They will win the next election if things keep going the way they're going. And, everyone's going One Nation and the LNP won't become a coalition. Yes, they will. Nothing will bring political parties together more than the prospect of gaining power. That's what you're there in politics to do. You're there to gain power. You're there to win government so you can introduce legislation and change the country, whether that's for the good or a bit worse. So hopefully my side of politics gets in for a long time, and they can actually work together for the benefit of this country. And, they've got to come out against this DEI bullshit. And, they are starting to sound stronger. To their credit, Pauline Hanson has been against this stuff for decades. Angus Taylor has definitely come around. I think Matt Canavan will come around. They're not stupid. They see our reform and restore polling. The actual Liberals, and I'm hoping with Abbott as their president, if they can purge, the one best thing that could happen in politics now is Malcolm Turnbull gets up an official Teals party so all the moderates in the LNP can jump ship and go join the Teals. That would be magnificent. And the Liberals could again become a conservative force. They could shed what's been anchoring them down in these polls and at worst case become a junior partner within that coalition with One Nation. That would actually be a good outcome because the One Nation would win the bulk of seats, but hopefully they wouldn't fight against the ministers or the potential ministers from the Liberal Party, the politicians who could actually competently run a lot of our ministries, which they have a number of people in their ranks who've done that before. One Nation, unless they recruit some very good people, are going to have people going in as total novices to run a government ministry. That, as much as I want One Nation to win, as much as I love the polls they're getting, when they get in governing, it's a whole different show. You've got to have people there that know how to govern. If they've got nobody, it could be a disaster, and they could be, again, a one-term government. Because whoever gets in next election, I can guarantee you one thing, whether it's the ALP, LNP, One Nation, mixture of both, whoever gets in, there will be a low tolerance threshold with the Australian public. Whoever wins the next one's going to have to make a lot of commitments to the Australian public, and they're going to have to follow through. So the Australian public are going to be expecting big results from whoever wins. So, Pauline has been talking about getting rid of the DEI and the multiculturalism and all that. She's got to follow through. The Liberals and Nationals, if they get in a coalition with One Nation, they can't try and tear that down or sabotage that. That would be their death knell. They'd be gone. If the ALP somehow managed to get up, and I saw Hanson talking about this, I actually think politically what would be a smart strategy for Albo is to go to the polls now while he has a chance of winning, because I can't see in 2 years the way he's going that he'll be in a winning position. In 2 years, I can actually see, and I'm praying and hoping, as long as they don't screw it up, there's fingers crossed on there. If One Nation and the Liberals and Nationals can be semi-competent for the next 2 years, I actually see a centre-right landslide. Now, they might not win on their own, but combined, they'll win a huge amount of seats to give them a majority, and then it's up to them to govern well. And that's where I do think let's say Angus Taylor was the minor party leader. He would be Deputy Prime Minister for Pauline Hanson. Angus Taylor, no matter what you think of him, is a very smart man. He would actually be a good person for Pauline to bounce things off. He could be, most of you won't know this, the Alan Stockdale of a Jeff Kennett government. Jeff Kennett did an amazing amount of good for Victoria. But the guy behind it, the brains behind it, was a guy called Alan Stockdale. Between the two, they turned this state around, and it's a disaster now, I know, but they had to turn it back around there, which gives me hope that someone could turn it around, though I don't see many candidates that are capable of doing it, but you got to hope. So Alan Stockdale was the brains behind Jeff. Jeff was the front man. They worked beautifully as a team. Alan Stockdale didn't want to be Premier. He was quite happy to be Treasurer. And he did all the hard yards in the background. I could see an Angus Taylor doing the same thing for a Pauline Hanson Prime Minister. In fact, that would be overwhelmingly a really good thing. I mean, for example, if this is as long as they hold their seats. If a Matt Canavan wins a lower house seat or even a Senate seat, put him as Minister of Climate Change to undo all the harm the Bowen's done. But whatever they do, they've got to get rid of this woke DEI multicultural bullshit before it's too late, before we're totally divided. And they've got to give ordinary Australians something to rally behind. And that's whether you're a white Australian, whether you're a Chinese Australian, whether you're an Indian Australian, don't really care. Whether you're just an Aussie, forget this Indian, Chinese, whatever, you're an Aussie. You love this country. You want the best for the country. You want it going forward. We don't want what's going on over in the UK. And that's going to be a tough conversation. There's been a real big conversation about remigration. Now, I'm not opposed to remigration in certain instances. I am concerned with the talk of millions. That's big number. So I've asked Scotty Challen, I've asked Sam Bamford, I've asked a few of these guys to come on board and have a discussion with me on this podcast. I'll ask them again because I want some clarity on it. Now, if they can provide me clarity, I could swing right behind on it. But I want remigration for sensible purposes, to get out all the criminals, to get out all those who aren't here on a proper visa, to get out all those that may commit the same crimes that we're seeing in the UK. If we've got bastards in our society that can repeat the Southport massacre of those girls, or can repeat the killing of Henry Nowak, if we've got families there that would work together to hide that crime by hiding the weapon, by telling lies to the police, by ringing their hotline number, the police hotline number, and lying on that, they should be deported. And anybody with the potential to do that should be deported and remigrated out of this country. On that, I have no objection. If they're a family that's here on a permanent visa and they're related to another family who have been good citizens, Aussies at second, third generation, should we be deporting them? So I'd really like to get some clarity on the whole remigration thing. I'm not for example, remigration camps. We have police and security forces that would be keeping tabs on the real bad ones. Get them out of here. And then go through a process. And I like what Angus Taylor said about Australian values and people having to sign off. They're not prepared to sign off that. They go. Easy. That's actually a really good policy. And I think it's even something Hanson begrudgingly admitted was a good policy because she said it was one of her own. So here we go. We got a few comments. Ooh, we'll have a look. Let's see who's there. I'll give myself a break on that. An abortion? Liberalism isn't conservatism. It's a massive problem in the West that you liberals are so brainwashed. You aren't nationalists, but internationalists. I don't know who you're talking to, Anna. Australia needs mass stillation. No, I don't know about mass stillation. Challen is extremely... Oh, here we go. How's Scotty Challen, who's calling for remigration in the millions, shallow? Asians and Africans don't belong in the West, really. They aren't Australian. Oh, here we go. Immigration, blah, 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 blah. Right. See you, Anna. Seen Anna's type. Sorry, just making sure. Oops, wrong. Oh. Sorry, guys. With this weather, gotta give it a tick. Okay. Here I am. I'm back again. Sorry, I just went down for a little bit with this weather. Yeah, Melbourne. My connection's up and down a little bit. Anna, and what a ridiculous name, Anna Abortion. Really, you can see what she's all about. But anyway, good old Anna. I've just said goodbye to Anna. I just don't know that crap. When she says Asians aren't Australian, I would, as long as I could get permission from these families, I would encourage anyone to come and meet the Asian families. And Asia is a big term. It takes in a lot of different people. Asia can include anyone from Japan right through to the Middle East. So that includes the Indians, the Pakis, Afghanistan. So it's just to say Asians is a bit ridiculous. There's different types of Asians, for example. In Korea, there's different types. So, it's like saying Europeans there's a lot of different groups of demographics in Europe. Europe takes in a huge swathe. For example, Turkey is technically part of Europe. So, you have Muslims, you have Christians, you got the whole load in Europe. So, where does it end? Where does it finish? All that sort of thing. So I just find it a silly debate, and I just found what Anna just said there pretty silly. So I've got good Asian friends. I've got good Islamic friends. I've got good Christian friends, Aussie friends, white friends, brown friends, whatever. I live in Melbourne. You can't really avoid it. I rely on my customers to keep my business going. I've got to know a whole bunch of them. I've got Chinese families who've fled China for freedom because they're Christians, Catholics, who don't want to be persecuted anymore for their faith in China. I've got similar ones from Indonesia, 2 lots, both of them Catholic families, who wanted to get away from the mass Islamization demographics in Indonesia, where 90% of it is Muslim. So they've come to Australia for their kids where they can get a Christian education. All of these, and all of them have had their kids born here. They were born here. Maybe it was their parents that came across. I've got a Sri Lankan kid. I've had Russian kids, German kids. You put a blanket over them and you listen to their accent, and guess what? They sound Aussie. So, if you want to be doing all that sort of nonsense, that's fine. But that's up to you. Anyway, that was a bit of a distraction. I hope I'm just going to check that I'm still on. I think I am. Yep, I still am. Beautiful. Where was I? Just got distracted by young Anna. There we go. All right, back. Just getting my comments sorted out. So, yeah, I'd love to get those guys on just to clarify what their remigration is. And when people say mass deportation, it's a pretty simple thing to say. How about we get some clarity on what they mean by mass deportations? Is Australia going to be the country that we put people in the camps and send them off? Who are you going to send off? Who's going to make these decisions? Is it just Asia, or is it politicians, or the citizens dob them in? I mean, it's pretty easy to say that term, mass deportation, mass remigration, whatever. But is Australia really going to be that country that puts innocent people alongside criminal people into deportation camps? Is that who we are as a country? I'm open for the discussion, but I will go in there with some hesitation. But on the flip side, we can't have these arseholes that killed Henry Nowak and killed those Southport girls or killed the Bondi people, all those. We can't have them in this country. If they're in this country and they're scheming to do things, and I've got no doubt our security forces, our intelligence forces know who they are. I can't remember who said it. He goes, but with the gangs in Victoria, they know where they are, who they are, what they're doing. But what's the point? They send them their hands are tied behind their back, the police here. If they had stronger laws, they could go arrest these gangsters and put them behind bars tomorrow. But no, can't do that with our leftist politicians. or toughen up our deportation laws. So I've got no issue with that. But when you start talking mass deportations and Asians and Indians and whoever's been here for generations can't stay, so does Dr. Joe get kicked out of Australia? That'd be, in my opinion, absurd. So I've known plenty of good people from plenty of different cultures. As Aussie as the next person. And my heritage, for example, we were discussing this the other night. It goes right back to the early 1800s. That's as far back as we could find. It could go back further, so we're not far off the First Fleet. I could be the descendant of a convict. So, I've got no issue. We're a nation full of heritage Australians who came away from the other side of the globe to start a new life. That's the heritage we inherited. We need to definitely keep our Anglo demographic as a majority. We definitely can't have mass immigration. We definitely can't get overwhelmed. We've definitely got to start vetting immigrants to make sure they're going to embed themselves and be complementary to our values, our way of life. That part I've got no problem in, but we're not doing that. They're not doing it in England. They're not doing it here. They're just letting them all turn up. And it's, they want, I don't know what the motivation for politicians are. I don't think any of us do. We hear them all, the uni party and the globalist and, they're bringing all, I don't know. I don't think anybody who makes these accusations know. One thing that does seem obvious to me is no political party wants to oversee a recession because that's political poison. So it does make a bit of sense to keep our GDP the way it is to allow more immigrants in so we avoid going into technically a recession, even though we are probably, if we do. From all reports, if we stopped immigration tomorrow for a year, we'd be in a recession, if not a depression. So, that's what politicians on both sides have done. Well, they've got to have the balls to say, we need to stop and freeze migration. We need to do, I'm arguing we should freeze migration for 10 years while we sort this nonsense out. A lot of people are saying 5. Well, I've doubled that. So it's not like, unlike an abortion, that all kumbaya with immigration. But you can have a bit of common sense as well. So there's people here, in 10 years' time, it gives us a chance to vet everyone that's here and say, are you here for the right reasons? If not, you got to go. If you are, you're welcome. And in that 10 years, come up with an immigration policy that every Australian can accept. And you know what? Put it to an election. Have a referendum on it. What's our immigration policy going to be? What's our laws going to be? What's the legislation going to be? Put it to the people, not to the frickin' politicians. Give the people a chance to have a say in it. And then hopefully we can avoid, and just as importantly, forgetting all that, just as importantly, getting rid of the DEI multiculturalism bullshit. If we're going to have a referendum on this, that multiculturalism and DEI has got to be a big part of it. There probably needs to be 3 questions, maybe more on that referendum. And scrapping multiculturalism will be high on the list. Scrapping DEI would be high on the list. You'd have one of those questions, what should our demographic be? What percentage? So those things have not got to be campaigned on, voted on and decided by the Australian people. And if the Australian people are stupid to keep accepting what we've got, well, that's what we've got. People get the governments and the laws they deserve. But hopefully we can start pushing back against those laws. Speaking of which, getting on to something else. Through my business, I have an opportunity, and we're going to be pushing this over the next 6 to 8 weeks. I have a window of opportunity, 6 to 8 weeks, if that, of getting over the next 5, maybe 10 years, which is important. Governments come and go. Like I said, Pauline might win the next election, either Victoria or federally, but they might be booted out after one term. We've got to have something that is consistently a lobbying, not just a lobbying. I don't want to just be a lobbying, something that brings conservative people, libertarians people of the centre right together to discuss common sense issues like I'm discussing here. We've got to have forums that develop potential politicians that will influence party politics. So through my business, I'm hoping to establish 6 venues in the next 10 years, maybe more. across eastern Melbourne to begin with, eastern and southeastern Melbourne, and then expanded out. A legitimate business thing. But with these venues, there'd be enough space for us to establish what I call a conservative hub. That's what I'm thinking, or common sense hub, maybe a conservative common sense hub. I don't know. We could steal the MAGA term, make Australia great again. But I sort of want to steer clear from that because I want this to be uniquely Australian, not a steal off the American soil. That lot, I've got to get a cover for it. So I've got a genuine chance to do that. So I don't have to put it in there. I could establish these venues. It's through my sports program, with or without it. So I want to include it in it so we can start bringing that country back. And we can start rallying the centre-right side of politics. Whether you're a conservative, libertarian, whatever, we've got to do something that brings people back to common sense, centre-right policies and ideas so we can get rid of this DEI multiculturalism. And even importantly, fireproof, let's say One Nation, this is just a hypothetical, One Nation and the Liberals and the Nationals form a coalition to win government. They get into government and halfway through the wheels start falling off and the legislation we got promised doesn't happen and somehow magically the ALP win again. Or that coalition doesn't follow through on a number of their promises for the legislation, for example, getting rid of multiculturalism. You've got to have something that can actually lobby those people or even potentially in the longer run stand against those people to make sure we as a country, we as a people get what we want. And it's got to have something that has influence. So that's something we're trying to do. But like with everything, it needs dollars. So I'm not looking, well, actually, I am looking for some funds, but not like, I don't consider this a grift because it's going to do my community a lot of good. So, and also people if they want to get into this deep, they can purchase shares in the company and they can be taking some equity so they share in the profits that we got. And over a 5-year period, we actually got a business plan that will deliver, not through the conservative hubs, but the business side of the plan could deliver $1 million per year through each venue. So if we put in 6 venues, each one of them delivering $1 million, this is a multi-million-dollar idea. So there's actually, for an investor, a good reason to jump in on this. One, you'll be contributing to these venues. You'll be having equity in the business, and you'll get an amazing return. It will return your, probably within 3 years, return your investment entirely, and 3 to 5 years, you'll double that investment back. But at the same time, you'll be helping youth get into junior sport and recreational activities. These are junior sport venues that we're going to be starting. You'll be serving the community, but also we're going to have a common sense hub that discusses, develops, and inspires common sense ideologies, ideas, and potentially politicians, and will influence political parties. So, and we'll have a lot of fun doing it. So there's part in that. So you can be there a small-time donor, if you like, or you can be an investor. Ultimately, we're looking between 10 and 50 investors of $1,000. We can actually take up to 100 investors of 1,000, or we can take one investor of 50 or 100,000, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. Or you can just contribute to it if you like. If you've got $5, put in $5. That won't buy your shares though. Okay, so we've got to raise some significant funds to get this off, but then after that, it will start generating profits fairly quickly. At the same time, we put these hubs in. So whether you can afford to invest in that or not, I've got 11,400, nearly 11,500 followers. We're looking for between 50 and 100. Now, even if that doesn't come from my following, and out of that followers, I've got about 8,000 verified followers because I've looked into that part, which is still nice. That's actually, I was expecting out of 11,500, I might have 4,000 verified followers. I've actually got about 8,000, which is good. So if we spread the word, and even if out of that 8,000, we can get 50 to 100 investors in, that can help not just change the place, but actually work to make sure that the position we're currently in, we never get back to again. And I think that's just as important as trying to get politicians in there that will promise change. But how often have we had politicians promise change but then not deliver it or cater to another group? That's not going to happen with this. Not a chance. So, there's more information going to come out about that soon. Share this video. Try and get some people on board. Get them to DM me. I'll be putting stuff up next week. And we're going to be trying to do something that's unique, something that's different, something that make our community better, but also protect our community moving forward. So, and this death of Henry Nowak is what's got this idea going in my head. I just can't sit by and let this happen to a young Aussie kid. If I'm sitting by and doing nothing, I'll be racked with guilt. If I'm sitting by and at least attempting to try and make sure this doesn't happen to a young Aussie kid, and I don't care their skin color, their background, no one should be getting murdered because of their skin color, their background, their culture, whatever. And the police should not be trying to cover up, and they should not be going there with tinted glasses towards any person because of their skin color. And it's time, as white people, we stood up for our people and showed we're above this. We're better than this bullshit hatred that's been shoved down our throat, and it's about time we demanded something better. So if you want to come on my program and to discuss it and go on board with that, great. I'm just looking for another 50 to 100 like-minded people to get us started. And we'll be off and running. You'll be a shareholder. You'll have equity in the business. And away we go. It'll be a lot of fun. So if you're up for that, DM me. I'll be putting stuff out where you can email me and even contact me if you wish. Not too sure whether I'll put my phone number in there. People can email me first and then I can find out whether they're genuine. Not real keen on getting texts from people I don't know, but there'll be opportunities to contact me and get involved. So if people are going to put their money behind it, well, obviously they're doing it for the right reasons. So if it doesn't work, I've tried. I'll still keep doing, obviously, the live streams, the podcast, and having my little rants and discussing things with people like An-Abortion. What a horrible name, An-Abortion. Why would you have that name? Anyway, people are people. You can't do much about it. So let's have a look at X. Let's see what's going on in X. I've been ranting now for a good half hour. Come on, X, get up there. Here we go. I haven't yet seen this. I've got to have a look. Australian comedian Lisa Jane Spence has been fired after a far-left doxing campaign over this skit where she mocked Indigenous identity fraud by pretending to have transitioned in. Well, let's have a listen.
Auntie Lisa. So I'm Auntie Lisa. I started identifying as a black fella a few months ago. Am I Aboriginal? Yes I am. And I finally feel at peace with who I am, one of the mob. Aboriginal identity transcends skin colour. I am Aboriginal. End of story.
Oh. Okay, that's interesting in itself. Let me get my ugly mug back on here. Oh no, that one's better. So I don't find that particularly funny skit because I don't think it's particularly funny. But she's right. I mean, I understand the reasoning behind the skit, though. How many you watch all these Welcome to Country? How many of them are whiter than we are? When we say about protecting white people, it's gotten beyond a joke. You got blonde-haired. They don't even look remotely Indigenous. So that's what she's taken the mickey out. I wouldn't have put the petrol. I think that's pretty offensive, and for anyone where she's sniffing the petrol tank. But that's kind of stupid. The rest of it, I understand a skit, and she certainly shouldn't have been getting sacked for any of it. It's amazing how they can have skits about white people, but you can't have them about Indigenous people. We've lost our sense of humour. What's this? This is the young man, Henry Mallett. I got back to the start. I think I missed that. 18. That is just so sad. I think that if you haven't been touched by that, one, there's something wrong with you. Number two, oh, God, that glare. Sorry about the glare, everyone. Horrible. Number two, that makes it a bit better. I think when everyone was watching that cam footage, that's the sort of thing you're thinking about. You know, what would your approach be if that was your son, your grandson, your brother, your cousin, your nephew, whatever, and you've seen him grow up from a young fella, start of his life, 18 years of age, and I tell you, the bastards, the bureaucrats, the politicians, we're all talking about the police and the Sikh guy that killed him and the family, the politicians, the bureaucrats, every bastard that's done this DI, woke, multicultural bullshit, they've got as much blood on their hands as the person who shoved the knife in this poor kid's back. You know, they allow the laws where these Sikhs can carry around knives. The interesting thing, it wasn't the knife that they carry around for their faith. It was another knife, but immaterial. If people aren't allowed to carry around knives, you're not allowed to carry around knives. But the laws, they're just there to keep politicians out of trouble. It's like the machete bins. Now, did anyone ever think that we were those machete bins were going to work? We've still got gangsters running around with machetes, and if it's not a machete, it'd be a kitchen knife or anything they can arm themselves with so they can get away with their crime. It's just a joke. Our politicians are a joke. The only thing the criminals will respond to is sentences that they're fearful of. So, for example, this bastard that killed Henry should have got the death penalty. In my book, I've got no problem with the death penalty coming back. None at all. Here we go. Read this. Comedian. I'll get back to my one view. Comedian under fire of said, which she dressed up as a sniff petrol and everything. I apologise. Well, if she said that, good on her. I apologise to nobody. I need a bit more of that. Kim Hughes. Really, only 1% of cricket fans can recognise this player. If you're one of them, yeah, it's Kim Hughes. My goodness me, how can they not recognise that? Now that's funny. Petition to get Auntie Lisa to do the welcome to country to Origin Game 2. That's good. Okay, what's Sam got to say? I agree with Sam a lot. I disagree with him. Same probably with him. This was taken in my hometown, Adelaide. Oh, okay. Didn't realize. I thought it's Canberra-based. They're not even hiding the replacement of Australians anymore. What happens in 10 years when Australians aren't the majority of our emergency services and military? Shut the gate, deport the illegals, criminals, and start a remigration program. Millions must go. See, that's everything up to the millions must go. And I'd love Sam to come on and explain what he means by millions. He might be able to convince me. But I'm with him on this. You belong in blue. Why is that only marketed towards Sikhs? Well, that's kind of crazy. Anyway. I'd love to play him, but he goes for too long. Always worth a listen. Ball of the century. Shane Warne, great man. Let's watch it.
Start, just a slip. There's a short cover.
Something different.
3 other men on the offside saving the single. 3 on the on and deep backward square.
Richie Bennett, the greatest commentator ever. And this was an amazing ball. I watched this live many, many years ago. Come on, Wardy.
First ball in Test cricket in England for Shane Warne. And he's done it. He started off with the most beautiful delivery. Gadding has absolutely no idea what has happened to it. He still doesn't know. He asked Kenny Palmer on the way.
I love Benno's response, and he's done it. I remember watching this. I was jumping out of my chair watching this, but Benno's so calm.
Out. Kenny Palmer just gave him a raised eyebrow and a little nod, and that's all it needed.
That's an unbelievable.
Well, that has turned about 2.5 feet. Gadding can't believe his eyes. What a start for Shane Warne.
And for those who haven't played cricket, and I love my cricket, if you had ever tried to bowl a leg break, a leg spinner, which is what he just bowled there, it's the toughest ball in cricket. I used to bowl medium pace outswing. I used to open the bowl and did pretty well, but never really had the pace to go next level up. But at my level, I was pretty good. So I played a lot of cricket, was an outswing bowler. I used to try and bowl the Dennis Lilly across the seam thing, which is like a leg spinner. And I had a few times I thought, I could be a leg spinner. So I tried it in the nets. Seriously, it's the hard. I would rate it the hardest skill in cricket, especially when you combine the other deliveries you have as a leg spinner. Warney just made it look so easy. Ridiculous. That man was a genius in sport. Not genius in other things, but in sport, he was a genius. See what else we've got. I'll get into my bookmarks in a minute. Police in the UK impaled a teenager by the Stratton offence. Initially, police cleared that there were any room. People contained. Yeah, okay, nothing came of that either. What's this? The old UK police again. What did they do this time? They said they impaled him on this fence. Oh! Ow! It's a bit rough. Can easily break a jaw doing that. Was that skin hanging down? I think that look, everyone's on the police at the moment. There is one, and don't get me wrong. I think some of the police behaviour ever since COVID has been disgraceful. But there's also still a lot of good coppers out there. And they obviously, because of our politicians and that, they have got some laws there that are nearly impossible for them to implement without getting the public offside. So I sort of see theirs, and they're copping so much abuse. There's got to be a part of resentment. Am I justifying that? No. What they did to that young man there? No. But who knows? They've probably been spat upon, the leftists fill condoms and plastic bags of piss and throw it on them. So there's going to be a lot of anger within the police. But anyway, I'm not excusing anything they've done, but I'm also trying to understand their behaviour, which is very hard to it sometimes. Henry Nowak's grandmother, Kelly Hatchett, has slammed Hants police for thank God. Shame on the monster who took him, shame on the officers who should have helped him, and shame on the organisation that trained police to prioritise accusations of racism over a dying man. Well, I'm glad to see one of their families come out and spoke up. It must be incredibly difficult. If you follow this in England, Nigel Farage is copping a bit of flack because their dad got up and he spoke so stoically. So that means with a lot of strength. And he did plead with people not to resort to violence and not to divide the community and all that sort of thing. But people are going to, I just was wondering, I'm wondering whether the police put him up to that or someone put him up to it, because people are naturally going to get pissed off with this. And no matter what he says, there is going to be angry people. And angry, good on Nigel Farage. And I'm no Nigel Farage fan, I tell you. I'm more with Kemi Badenoch and the guy for Restore, 100% over in England, if you know your English politics. But they're all gunning for Nigel Farage because they're saying he's politicising the death of Henry Nowak. The same people who are accusing him of that are the ones who took the knee for George Floyd. You know, total hypocrites. But I'm just wondering whether the dad was misled in his comments. If he wasn't, then I don't think he thought some of those comments right through. There should have been an investigation, and good on that grandmother for speaking out. There was anti-white bias, there was racism, and I'm glad someone in their family has said something along those lines. I got the NSN going through the Anzac Day booing thing. Don't know whether you boo it at the Anzac Day ceremony. Lozzie, I disagree with a bit she says, but we cannot coexist with uncivilized, savage people. I don't disagree. Immigration has failed, not entirely. Multiculturalism has failed. Yes, it has. Or has it gone exactly to plan for those who put, well, I don't know. Lozzie, do you know? We must reverse everything. We must reclaim. So she wants the full migration. And, yeah, this bastard should be deported. He should be on charges. I mean, but how long ago was that from? No one should be. And I've seen, for example, I have seen a lot of these on X, but I've also seen ones with white guys doing similar. But that's disgraceful. No one should be allowed to hit a man who's already unconscious like that. I mean, you could kill someone. So he should be in jail for attempted murder and then deported. Now, this was debated in Parliament today. More than 50,000 non-Australian citizens have used a government-backed pathway into the housing market has emerged, sparking fierce debate. The government's excuse for this is they were permanent residents. Well, this is the 5% deposit, whatever. That should be for Australian citizens, not permanent residents. And if the argument that they made today in Parliament that these people have been here for so long and all that, well, if they've been here for so long and they've invested so much in the country, why haven't they become citizens? If they haven't become citizens, bad luck. Is this his sister?
I've just seen a longer video of the body cam footage for Henry Nowak. And after my video yesterday, I haven't been able to get out of my head for no longer than 5 minutes. And the longer version I've just seen is even worse.
Look, if you hope people have been following this, they did cut that cam footage down where one of the police officers said his eyes were diluted, or he was basically dying at that stage. But they've twigged at the end of that tape, and then they cut it off. So what happened after that? Why did they cut it off there?
They didn't.
Let's see what she's got to say.
When the police officers turned up, he was wedged between the front of a house and a car. He couldn't even get up. And the one who stabbed him was there running his mouth. And not once did they actually stop. And he was laying there, struggling to breathe.
So
It's just pure fucking I'm just such a gut-wrenching feeling. It's horrible.
She's talking about the video that's already out. So I just was wondering whether there's a longer one that's come out. Carl Stefanik, what's he got to say? Luke and Amy say their 8-year-old son, Jack's NDIS funding, said to be cut by Jack has level 3 ultimate cousins. Yeah. Yeah. This is the double standard that people are seeing, especially white people. You know, why can people protest about... I was trying to get this right. Why can people protest about BLM? Oh, my God, what's going on here? Sorry, guys, I'll get it back going. I remember that. They were running. Look at the difference. Mark, isn't it? That's the difference. That's the bullshit that we need to get rid of. Unbelievable. And yet they try to say in their parliament in England, and they'll say the same thing over here, that the double standard doesn't exist. We see it with our own eyes every week. Crazy. It is dominating the feeds, though. Candace Owen is over in England. God. Let's go in our bookmarks. Sorry, guys, I got a bit distracted there. A couple of bookmarks to finish off with. If anyone's got any contributions other than Anna, send them through. Exclusive polling reveals growing support for Coalition One Nation Alliance among centre-right voters, despite Liberal MPs rejecting the prospect. Let me guess, they're moderates. Of course we need that alliance, 100%. I don't even want to play that bit. The porn star, okay. I don't have much there. I didn't think I had much. It's been too busy. So I might, that's going back quite a way, some of that stuff. So I might call it a day there. Like I said, I will get some more information out about, sorry, guys. There we go. I'll get some more information out about that opportunity to form conservative common sense hubs in Melbourne. And I'm not looking at that. I don't think it'll have any impact on this election. I'm looking at that for a longer term project to make sure no matter what happens in this election, whoever gets into power, we hold their feet to the fire. Simple as that. And we don't just rely on politicians to come up with good policy. We rely on good people with good intentions and good values to start coming together to start influencing that. So anyway, there'll be more coming of that in coming weeks. That's it for me now. Hopefully we're on cheerier subjects next week. So from me, and there he is, my boy, nice and comfortable. From me and him, God bless your kid, God bless you, God bless your kids, God bless your grandkids, especially after what's happened this week. God bless your pets, God bless that flag, and I will see you next week. We'll be back hopefully Tuesday next week. We had to do it on Thursday this week because of work, which works into that business plan I was telling you about. But I'm looking to be back on Tuesday next week. We'll see how things go. All right, everyone. Good.